Hey there. Welcome to First Look. This is the beginning of Advent edition. We've moved now into a new season, which is exciting and interesting, and I think in many ways comforting. Every time I talk about uh, Advent or we move into this season, I think that we tend to talk about a lot of the same things, and some of that can feel um, like, well, how do I make this in a way that will seem creative or interesting or different? But I think also there's something that I've learned about trying to lean into what's comforting about that. And I think one of the things that got me thinking about that was, you know, um, sometimes people in my life or people maybe you see on Facebook or online or people you have, on the peripheries of your life will talk about Christmas and they'll start talking about it like as soon as they possibly can. And some people in my life have even gotten to the place where they're saying, look, I think I'm going to decorate, like put up my Christmas tree. I'm going to decorate as soon as humanly possible. I'll do it in October if I want to. And that might sound a little early for a season. But the sentiment there is if I need a little bit of happy, and that makes me happy, then why not do that? Who does it hurt? Right. And, it's hard to argue with. And so I've kind of leaned in a little bit more to the idea that the season that we embark on brings that kind of comfort and joy and peace to it that because we talk about the busyness of it all the time. We talk about the sacred versus the kind of capitalist ideas around the season. All that, I mean, that you're as familiar with that as I am. So I figure why not spend a little bit of time just being okay with and absorbing and enjoying the parts of the season that can feel comforting. Because I think that's part of what I have tried to learn over time about what church can be. You know, I do spend a lot of time trying to recognize the places where church can kind of push the envelope. We should be those who encourage our communities to um, be more caring and more loving and more hopeful and bring a sense of empathy and gathering. That should be what churches do, and I think in large part that is what churches do. And with that comes a sense of we're not doing this, we, the collective we aren't doing this yet, but we could be doing this, and so let us be the example of how to do it. um, and the church is sometimes wonderful at that and sometimes not at all. But I think one of the things it also is, besides being a change agent, is also a place of rest. We talk about sanctuary, we talk about that room being a sanctuary because it is. And the concept there should be that this is a place where you can find sanctuary, whether it's a sense of safety or a sense of belonging or a sense of peace or a sense of spiritual home, any of those things. So I've really tried to embrace and recognize the need for the both and of that you shouldn't sacrifice one with, because you want the other one to thrive. So that's, I think, part of what I want to try to lean into this coming season, even as we talk about change or expectation, that we also talk about what we are used to in the season and how we can highlight that and make the best of it. So this first this first passage for this Sunday is really a way of us explaining, beginning a story. because a part of this year is exploring kind of the who we are in relation to our 100th anniversary. So I use a curriculum, or I have used a curriculum um, for Advent specifically, and it's by a group called Sanctified Art. But the group, the big part of what it does is incorporating um, art and poetry and visual things into a curriculum. So the curriculum and the language. So thinking about art, not just pictures, but um, a kind of artistic way of speaking, um, the art of writing, the art of poetry, the art of um, liturgy. Those are the things that are a part of that. So this particular curriculum from that group is called this. I just chose one not because it's the newest one, but because I thought it's the one that fit with us. And it's called From Generation to Generation. And so it has some legacy to it, and it has some remembering to it, and it has a connection from past to present to future. And I thought that was appropriate for what we're doing. So generation to generation is the theme. So what you're going to find is here at the sanctuary we have devotionals that you can use that are on that theme, and we have the same one online that we have already sent out to folks, but we'll continue to send out just so you don't lose track of where it is. And that will be a part of the liturgy. That'll be a part of the what you see here and what you see on Sunday. So those are kind of things for you to be aware of moving forward. So what I wanted to do was, one, introduce you to the idea, and then to give you a sense of where we're headed, at least for this particular week. So the first Sunday does something kind of unique, and it's going to kind of stretch you a little bit to in order to listen to the whole of the passage, because this whole passage I'm about to read is just names, basically. So it's how we get from David to Jesus. Okay, so this is the genealogy text, and it's a part of the liturgy for this year, because it literally is from generation to generation. And I think what I'm hoping to do with this first one, because this particular one is the title for this sermon is called "Room for Every Story," and the liturgy talks about making room for our stories. Is that the genealogy is not just a list of people, but it's the building of a story that takes us from where we have been to where we are. So I'm gonna do my best to read all these names, because they could be names that I haven't read in a while, so bear with me. But I might pause along the way to kind of highlight some, because my guess is the way I think I'm going to preach this is by looking at it, step by step like that. Okay. So an account of the genealogy of Jesus. Oh, I'm sorry. This is Matthew chapter 1, verses 1 through 17. Okay. An account of the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, the father of Jacob, the father of Judah and his brothers. Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar. And Perez, the father of Hezron. Hezron, the father of Aram, Aram of Abinadab, Abinadab of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz by Rahab, Boaz the father of Obed by Ruth. Some of these names you know, okay, and those probably are some ones that I'll highlight. Obed the father of Jesse, Jesse the father of King David. David was the father of Solomon by the wife Uriah, and Solomon the father of Rehoboam. I can never say that one. Rehoboam, who was the father of Abijah, Abijah the father of Asaph, Asaph the father of Jehoshaphat, Jehoshaphat of Jeram, Jeram the father of Uzziah, Uzziah the father of Jotham, Jotham the father of Ahaz, the father of Hezekiah, the father of Manasseh, Amos, Josiah, Josiah the father of Jeconiah and the brothers at the time of deportation to Babylon. And after that, Jeconiah was the father of Shelathiel, Salathiel, father of Zerubbabel, of Abiud, I won't get that one. Abiud, the father of Eliakim. I told you there's some of these that were just going to trip me up. Azor, Zadok, Achim, Eleazar, Mathan, Mathan the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, and is called the Messiah. So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations, from David to deportation to Babylon, 14 generations, and from the deportation of Babylon to the Messiah, 14 generations. So that text right there, one second, let me find it. The text right there, although is very difficult for me to read at least, and I'm glad that I'm not giving that to anybody else to try to decipher. But the reason I want to read it, the reason I want to say the names, is because I want to highlight the story. And I think that one of the things that we tend to do is that we kind of yada, yada, yada our way through some of those stories. But all of them come with their own lifespan and, joys and concerns and fears and strengths and weaknesses and victories and failures and all of those things that all humans do. And one of the things I want to be able to highlight is that each of those stories has a piece of the puzzle to how we understand ourselves, how we understand Jesus, how we understand faith. And so they're all named for a very particular reason. And some of that reason is because the pattern of the generations, right? What they're trying to do when they say, 14 and 14 and 14, is to give you a sense of purpose, that there's some purpose to all that. There's some synchronicity to that string, and that Jesus comes at the end of something that is important. And, if you're Matthew trying to convey this, this like sense of who Jesus is, then part of what you have to do is convince the people that, yes, this, shepherd's, this carpenter's kid, this one who was found by the shepherds, this kid is actually the Messiah, who grew up to be, he has no power, he has no authority, he's not he has none of those things, and yet somehow I'm supposed to follow him as the Messiah. That's what they're trying to convince the people of. And so, talking about those generations and talking about the equidistant generation from here to here, from here to here, from here to here, would have given people a sense of, importance, and that's why all those stories are there. That's why, of course it's this person, because look at the exact numbers and how all that comes together to form this prophetic moment in time. Because that wouldn't have been, Jesus would not have been someone that you would have thought would have fit the bill for what he was. And so part of his story is that one, but part of his story is also who he is. And so how do all those things come together into the person that we know? And there's a lot of that, I think, when we have talked about our own history as a church, on a more minor scale, we are those who are also products of all those who came before us. Pastors are hired in large part because of who they had previously, in many cases, or who they think will be good. Like when they I don't know why they hired Roderick Smith to be the first pastor of Northmont, but my guess is that he seemed like the kind of person who could take on the challenge of starting a church in a new area, because not everybody would be inclined to do that, or have the wherewithal to do that, or have the personality to do that, the organizational skills, or the charisma to do that. Some people are then hired to renew some sense of spirit, or heal something, or move them forward, or toe the line, or keep things, just steer the ship. That's whatever. They're hired because they are innovative, or they're hired because they are stabilizing, in whatever ways that means. Who came before you has a big influence on who's after you. That was, I'm sure, true with me as the pastor here, and will be true after me. The next person who comes after me will have to take who we are at that point and then navigate it. And the people who choose that person will do so in large part with what we have done over my period of time in mind. I mean, of course that's true. The same was true for those who came after, even with interims in between. So that's a big part of how we get a legacy. How do we get to where we are? But that's not just true about pastors. It's also true about music directors. It's also true about session members. It's also true about deacons. It's also true about anyone who takes on the influence of a place. Their personalities and their skill sets are all managed. We're in that season now where we're in the nominating season, and we're looking at, okay, who's rotating off of session, who's still on session, and who do we need, what roles need our attention, what new things are we about to do that will need our attention. Same is true for deacons. Who's rotating on and off, but also what do we hope to do moving forward? Where do we notice that we could grow? We have new Stephen ministers who are coming on board. How does that influence the way that we do? All of these things are connected. And I think a big part of understanding our own stories and understanding the story as a scripture is to have some sense of how all that fits together. And that's what I hope to highlight some on Sunday, is looking at least some of those stories and some of where it gets you, and then how all that kind of comes together. Because I can't do that many I can't highlight every single generation in that whole stream, but some of it I can. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about. And so, how does that connect with where we are in Advent? Not just where we are as a church, but where we are in Advent. You know, I was talking on Sunday about the fact that we're having Thanksgiving, that Thanksgiving is about to happen. And for everybody, Thanksgiving is a mixture of the way things have been and the way things are and the way things will be. Any holiday like that, whether it's, who hosts the holiday, or who is in charge of what guests are there, what guests aren't there, how family dynamics change. No matter what you think of as, well, this is the way we always did it in our family, there was some point where that's not the way you did it. Something changed. Your person, your grandmother or aunt or grandfather or dad or mom or whoever hasn't always hosted the meal. Like, they were the guests at the meal at some point. And somewhere along the line, those things changed. Preferences changed, menus changed, venues change. And so we have this constant state of change and permanence that we're wrestling with all the time. And our capacity for that changes all the time. How we want things to stay the same and how we want things to change. And that doesn't all happen at the same time. I might be ready for change before you are, or vice versa. You work that out. Well, the same is true, I think, for the way we understand our faith, in this season. And I think Advent gives us a moment to kind of think about what we hold the most dear. Like, we've spent all this time kind of thinking about who we are. But, I think Advent gives us a sense of being able to think about what do we want to hold on to? Because Lent is kind of the opposite, right? Lent is like, what do we want to let go of? What do we no longer, what do we need to like shed ourselves of, right? Because it's Lent and we're talking about what keeps us from God, right? That separates us. But Advent, I think, gives us a sense of what do we hold dear. And part of what we talk about, traditionally, when you see that Advent wreath, we talk about, hope, peace, joy, and love. Those are things we hold dear. But we're going to, incorporate more things into that. And so I think that one of the things to round all that up, one of the things that Advent can kind of do is that if what we hold dear is, I think, getting a sense of what is most important to us on any given year is a pretty important thing to really understand, because things are going to change, or things are going to stay the same, or things aren't going to change as fast as we want them to, or things are going to change way too fast, or whatever it happens to be, is that we try to figure out for ourselves. We spend a little bit of time thinking, what is the most important thing to me, and how do I express it to the person in front of me? What do I need the most? Like, if everything burned down, like if the turkey was ruined, or the mashed potatoes didn't arrive, or whatever it is, if this person, was sick, or, any of those things, any of those disasters that can happen. What do I need more than anything in this season? If the presents don't work, or, something happens I don't expect, what am I reminded of that is actually the most important to me? And that's a thing to focus on as we move into Advent, is what do I hold most? What do I actually care about the most? Because when you focus on what you care about the most, other things start to kind of fall away. right? They don't become as, like, you don't become as stressed out about them. Like, well, is a clean house what I care about the most? No. Are making sure that I make, this many cookies, or have this big a gift for you, or what are the are that is that the most important? No, probably not. We spend the least amount of time preparing ourselves for the things that are the most important. We do so many things to try to capture something, and we spend very little time telling each other the truth, caring for each other through hard times, saying what people need to hear, apologizing when we need to apologize, seeing people for who they are, loving people for who they are. Uh, we spend a lot of time being guarded. We spend a lot of time trying to make it. And, you know, we spend not enough time connecting with the people that we want to connect with, because instead we care about all this other stuff. And I hope that that's more and more true for you and for me. So I'll give it a shot if you do. All right. Well, that's what I have for you this week. I hope that you can find the devotionals. I hope that you, um, well, if I think about it, I'll include the devotionals in this now. I think about it, I should just do that. Devotionals and Advent starts this week. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for being a part of what we do here. And I'll see you next time, I guess, for another First Look. So take care.